$14. That was the distance between Lena Crowe's daughter going on the school field trip and Lena keeping the lights on for another week. She stood at the kitchen counter with the permission slip in one hand and a pen in the other, doing the math she did every night. The kind of math they don't teach in school, where the answer is always which bill gets paid late this month. Maris sat cross-legged on the carpet in the next room, drawing horses with a crayon worn down to a nub. 8 years old. Already the kind of child who stretched everything, crayons, shoes, silence, until none of it could stretch anymore. Hi viewers, have you ever had to choose between two bills, knowing either choice would cost you? Drop that story in the comments, I want to hear it. Lena signed the permission slip. She would figure out the electric bill later. She always figured it out later. That was her whole life. Later, 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 until later ran out of room. She dropped the pen and reached for the stack of mail she had been avoiding. Gas company, credit card minimum, a grocery store flyer reminding her about prices she could not afford. And underneath all of it, an envelope that did not belong. Heavy paper, cream-colored, a law firm's embossed return address in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. The kind of envelope that smelled like decisions made in rooms with leather chairs. Lena's fingers went cold. She tore it open standing up, because sitting down would mean she was taking it seriously, and she was not ready for that. Words she had to read twice. Estate, beneficiary, real property. A woman named Odelia Hart had died 11 months ago and left Lena a house. A house. Not money. Not an explanation. A structure on a hillside in rural Pennsylvania, from a woman Lena had never met. But she knew the name. Odelia Hart. Her mother had spoken it exactly twice, both times late at night, both times in a voice that sounded like something being held shut against a storm. She never explained who Odelia was. She only said two things: that the woman's hands smelled like pennies and that she should have been kinder. Two details and a judgment. That was the entire history. And now this ghost, this footnote in her mother's sealed past, had reached across death and chosen her. The paperwork laid out conditions: 30 days to take possession in person, 6 months to clear personal effects. Anything left behind would be disposed of by the county. Disposed of. The word sat in Lena's mouth like something bitter. Maris appeared in the doorway holding up her drawing, a brown horse on a green hill. Behind the horse, a square house with one window. That's beautiful, baby. It's not beautiful, Maris said, dead serious. It's accurate. Lena wanted to laugh, but the letter pressed against her fingers like a hand on her back, pushed her toward something she could not yet see. She read the last line again after Maris went to bed. Read it under the lamp with the apartment quiet and the refrigerator humming its one low note. Mrs. Hart's sole instruction was that the property passed to you and no other. To you and no other. A dead woman had pointed through the dark and picked Lena Crowe out of the entire world. And Lena could not tell, not yet, not from this distance, whether that was mercy or a trap. The attorney's office opened at 9. She would be there at 8:55. Gilmore's handshake lasted exactly 1 second too long. Lena noticed because she had spent years reading men in offices, landlords, loan officers, caseworkers. And the ones who held your hand a beat past comfortable were always selling something they had not named yet. He gestured to a chair that cost more than her monthly rent. She sat with her purse in her lap and her shoulders drawn tight, the way she always carried herself in rooms built for people with better credit scores. Maris was in the waiting area with a receptionist who had offered a lollipop and a coloring book. Maris accepted both with the quiet pride of a child who understood charity but refused to be shamed by it. Gilmore spread documents across his desk like a card dealer. He talked fast. Inheritance tax, property assessment, maintenance liability, transfer fees. Every sentence carried a number, and every number carried a condition. And Lena listened the way she had trained herself to listen in every meeting, where someone with authority spoke quickly on purpose, with her face still and her mind flagging every word that sounded like a trap door. "The house is yours," he said. "The land too. About 4 acres on a hillside outside Bethel Falls. He paused, smiled. But there are conditions. Conditions. The word landed in Lena's stomach like a cold stone. In her world, conditions meant rules written by people who never had to follow them. 30 days to take physical possession. 6 months to clear all personal effects. Anything remaining reverted to the county. "Why me?" Lena asked. Gilmore's smile tightened at the edges. "Mrs. Hart's intentions aren't mine to interpret. You're the named beneficiary. That's all I can tell you. I never met her. That's not uncommon." He straightened a pen on his desk. People leave things to all sorts of unexpected parties. Unexpected parties, like she was a package delivered to the wrong address. Lena did not feel the silence that followed. She had learned years ago that quiet made office men nervous, and nervous men said true things by accident. Gilmore leaned forward. "I should mention, there's been interest in the property. A development group. The Hillside location is desirable." Another pause, practiced this time. "They've already submitted a preliminary offer. Cash, no contingencies." There it was, the real conversation underneath the polite one. "How much?" Lena asked. Not because she planned to sell, because she wanted to see what his face did when she engaged. He named a figure, enough to erase her debts, enough for a safer apartment, new winter coats, the kind of breathing room she had not felt since before Maris was born. It was also suspiciously fast. An offer on a property Lena had never seen, from a buyer she had never met, pushed through an attorney who was supposed to work for her. "I'll think about it," she said. His expression held, but something behind his eyes recalibrated, the way a vending machine adjusts when you put in the wrong coin. "Of course, take your time," he leaned back, "but these windows don't stay open forever." Outside, the October air cut across Lena's face. Maris was waiting on a bench, lollipop finished, coloring book untouched. "Do we have a house now?" Lena looked at her daughter. Hope sat on that small face like wet paint, vivid, exposed, easy to ruin. "We have a place," Lena said carefully. "I need to see it first." "Can I come?" "Yeah, baby, you can come." They reached the car. Lena buckled Maris in, sat behind the wheel, and did not turn the key for a full minute. Her phone buzzed in her jacket, unknown number. She let it ring. A voicemail dropped 6 seconds later. A man's voice. Not Gilmore, someone new, polite the way a cable feels slack right before it catches. "Mrs. Crowe, we should talk about that property before you make any decisions you can't take back." Lena played it a second time. Then she deleted the message, but not the number. Gravel popped under the tires like something breaking apart one piece at a time. The paved road had quit 20 miles back. The GPS surrendered 10 minutes after that, the blue dot drifting off the map like a balloon released by a child who had stopped caring. Now Lena was following a hand-drawn map the law firm had mailed with the paperwork, a map that looked photocopied from something decades older, property lines marked in ink that bled at the edges. Maris pressed her forehead against the back window and counted what she saw. Red barn, broken fence, mailbox with no house, another red barn. She said each one flat, like a witness giving testimony, and Lena loved her for it, for the way her daughter turned chaos into inventory, fear into data. The trees thickened, oaks, maples, white birch with bark peeling in sheets. Their branches wove together overhead, and the light turned green and uncertain, the kind of light that belonged to places where cell towers had never bothered to reach. The air through the cracked window changed, cooler by 10 degrees, wet, a mineral taste, stone and iron and rain-soaked earth. And under it, something green and patient, the smell of ground that had not been turned by a machine in a generation. The road curved, and the house was there, not waiting, not welcoming, just there, like a fact no one had argued with in 50 years. It clung to the hillside at an angle that fought gravity instead of accepting it. 2 stories visible from the front, but the rear wall disappeared into the slope, swallowed by dirt and root and decades of unchecked growth. The roof bowed in the center like a spine carrying too much weight. One porch post had cracked and heeled crooked, tilting the entrance like a jaw knocked sideways. Windows clouded with grime. A front door gone the color of dried blood. Overgrown brush climbing the stone foundation like the land was trying to pull the structure back under. Maris whispered from the back seat, "It looks like it's hiding." Lena killed the engine. The silence that replaced it was not empty. It was loaded. Insect noise, wind through leaves, the creak of a structure settling into its own weight. The particular quiet of a place that had been holding still for a very long time and was now deciding whether to move. She stepped out. The ground gave under her shoes, soft layers of compressed leaf fall, halfway between soil and cloth. Each step sank slightly, like the earth was measuring her. If you are still watching this without subscribing, you are about to watch a single mother walk into a dead stranger's house with her 8-year-old daughter, no cell signal, and nothing but a letter full of conditions. And you will not hit subscribe? Come on now, you know you need to see what is inside that house. Hit that button before you forget, because trust me, you do not want to miss what Lena finds in this kitchen. The porch groaned under her weight, not a warning, an acknowledgement. Old wood adjusting to a body it did not recognize, testing whether this new pressure was permanent or passing. Lena touched the front door. It swung inward without resistance, not forced, not forgotten. Left open as if the house had been told she was coming and had decided, on its own terms, to let her in. Inside, the temperature dropped immediately, 15 degrees cooler than the October air outside. A stale sweetness filled every room. Old paper, old fabric, dried lavender, and beneath those, something chemical and deliberate, preservative, something applied on purpose to keep what was here from decaying. Dust moved through columns of pale light like slow weather. The floorboards spoke under each step, every plank a different pitch, a different complaint, a different year of wait and release. The kitchen stopped her cold. Not because it was damaged, because it was occupied. Not by a person, by purpose. A ledger sat open on the table like a conversation interrupted mid-sentence. Jars lined the windowsill in exact size order. A wall calendar turned to a month 3 years gone, every square filled with small, tight writing. Not appointments, but dollar amounts. Names, numbers. A record of something being tracked with the patience of a woman who had nowhere else to be and nothing left to lose. Maris tugged her mother's sleeve. "Mom, look!" She was pointing at the open ledger page. The handwriting was small and furious. Dates down the left side, names across the center, dollar amounts on the right, some circled, some crossed out, some followed by question marks. And beside one entry, underlined twice in ink so heavy it bled through to the next page. They think no one is keeping count. They are wrong. Lena read it once, twice, 3 times. Each read landed different. First as a statement, second as a warning, third as a promise. Made by a dead woman who had spent years alone on this hillside, filling these pages, recording every dollar and every name, building a case no one had asked for. This was not a forgotten house. This was a weapon dressed as a ruin. And Lena had just walked through the front door carrying the only key that mattered. Her name on a dead woman's will. What she did not know yet, what she could not know, standing in that cold kitchen with her daughter beside her and the dust settling around them, was that someone outside these walls already knew what was in these pages, and they had been waiting for her to arrive. The staircase groaned like a body turning in its sleep. Lena put her foot on the first step and felt the wood bend. Not break, not crack, just yield, the way old things do when they have been carrying weight for longer than anyone remembers. She told Maris to stay in the kitchen, used the voice, the one that did not invite questions. Maris sat on a wooden chair that creaked under her 48 pounds, folded her hands on the table next to the dead woman's ledger, and watched her mother climb with the calm, unblinking focus of a child who already understood that adults kept the worst rooms upstairs. Lena gripped the banister, smooth, not from polish, from palms. thousands of trips up and down by a woman who lived alone on a hillside and still held on every time. Because whatever Odelia Hart had been, careless was not on the list. The air changed at the top of the stairs. Heavier. Two smells competing for the same space. Mothballs, sharp and chemical, the smell of things being preserved against their will, and lavender, dried to dust, stuffed into cloth pouches that hung from every doorknob, like offerings left at small altars nobody visited anymore. 3 bedrooms, each one arranged with a discipline that bordered on obsession. The first, newspapers. Stacks of them, tied with twine, pressed against the wall in chronological order, like the spine of some enormous book no one had been asked to read. Each bundle carried a sticky note on top, a reference number, handwritten, cross-indexed to something Lena had not yet found. This was not a woman who collected newspapers. This was a woman who filed evidence. The second bedroom, quilts. Dozens of them, folded into perfect squares, stacked on the bed frame with the precision of bricks in a wall. Wedding ring pattern. Log cabin. Bear paw. Lena recognized the stitching, Appalachian needlework, the kind passed from mother to daughter in kitchens, where the heating bill was always late and the fabric scrap bag was never empty. These were not art pieces. They were survival. Each quilt represented a winter that a woman on a fixed income had decided to outlast by hand. The third bedroom stopped Lena at the door. A rocking horse stood in the far corner, small, wooden, handles worn dark and smooth from the grip of children's hands. The paint, red once, now the color of dried clay, had flaked away in patches, and the runners were grooved from years of use. Somebody's child had ridden that horse. Somebody's child had loved it hard enough to wear it down to the grain. Maris would lose her mind over it. Lena could already see her daughter's legs pumping the runners, her laughter filling this room that smelled like preserved time. She forced herself to look away. The closet. A row of coats hung on wire hangers, wool, moth-eaten, the shoulders dusted with age. Lena pushed them aside, and they swayed like people who had been standing too long. Behind them, pressed flat against the back wall and almost invisible in the gray light, was a cardboard box. Block letters on the side, black marker, written with the kind of precision that suggested a ruler had been involved. Crowe, E. Keep. Her name. Misspelled the way every substitute teacher, every receptionist, every form she had ever filled out got it wrong. Crowe without the E. Close enough to claim, wrong enough to prove it came from someone who knew her only through a chain of damage she had never been told about. Lena carried the box to the bed, sat beside the quilts. The cardboard was soft with years, the tape yellowed and brittle. She peeled it back slow. Not because she was careful by nature, but because speed would mean she was ready, and every nerve in her body told her she was not. Photographs. Her mother, young, not just younger, transformed. 17, maybe 18, sitting on the front porch steps of this house, wearing cut-off shorts and a faded camp t-shirt. Hair pulled back, face half turned toward the camera, and smiling. Not the smile Lena knew. Not the one her mother wore like a locked door at school events and holiday dinners. This smile had no defense built into it, no caution, no cost. It was the smile of a girl who still believed people meant what they said. Lena touched the photograph and felt something break open behind her ribs. Not dramatic, not loud, just a seal giving way after decades of pressure. She had never met this girl. Her own mother had never shown her this version of herself. This girl with the open face had been buried so deep that not even her own daughter knew she existed. More photographs underneath. Her mother eating from a bowl at the kitchen table downstairs. Her mother standing next to a tall, broad-shouldered woman with gray hair, cropped short, and an expression caught between authority and fatigue. Odelia. It had to be. In the photograph, Odelia's hand rested on the girl's shoulder, not warm, not cruel. Just there. Like a fact that had not yet decided what kind of fact it wanted to be. And at the bottom of the box, a thin envelope. Lena's full legal name written across the front. The handwriting shook at the edges, as if the hand holding the pen had been fighting something. Age, maybe. Illness. Or the particular weight of words that had been carried for too many years without being spoken. She slid her finger beneath the seal, unfolded the single page, and the first line landed like a fist she did not see coming. I don't know if you'll come, but if you do, please read this before you start hating me. Start hating me. 3 words. Lena read them 4 times, and each time they struck a different place in her body. Throat first, then stomach, then the space behind her eyes, and finally, dead center of her chest, where they stayed like a nail driven into wood that was already cracked. The letter was 2 pages, handwritten on lined paper, the kind sold at dollar stores. No date at the top, just the salutation, Lena Crowe, with the E this time, spelled right, as if the box label had been written in a hurry, but the letter had been written in honesty. Odelia did not begin with an apology. She began with an admission. I raised your mother for 4 years, from age 11 to 15. I was not good at it. That sentence could have been the whole letter. It carried enough weight to fill a room. The flat, plain confession of a woman who had run out of ways to dress her failures in better language. But Odelia did not stop there. She named the damage. Specific, dated, unflinching. The winter, she forced Lena's mother to sleep in the unheated back room because the girl had cried at dinner, and Odelia believed tears were a habit discipline could cure. The birthday she skipped on purpose because she had convinced herself that attention made children soft. The Tuesday afternoon she looked a 12-year-old girl in the eye, a child in foster care, a child who had already lost every anchor she'd ever known, and told her that love was earned, that it was not something a person was owed just for being alive. I told myself I was building her up for a hard world, Odelia wrote. I was building the hard world, and I was using a child as the bricks. Lena's hands shook, not from anger, from the disorienting jolt of hearing a dead stranger name the wounds she had watched her mother carry for 30 years without ever understanding where they came from. Her mother flinched at raised voices. Her mother kept the heat at 74 degrees even in July. Her mother never, not once in Lena's entire life, forgot a birthday. And now Lena understood why with a force that knocked the air from her lungs. Because someone forgot hers, on purpose, as a lesson. The letter shifted. Odelia stopped counting her sins and started explaining what she did with the years that came after. I called her twice. She didn't answer. I wrote 3 letters. Each one came back sealed. I earned that silence. I own it. But Odelia had not collapsed into guilt. She had built something on top of it. I turned my attention to this hill, she wrote, to this house, to the people in this county who were being cheated the same way I cheated your mother. Not with cruelty they could point at, but with the kind that hides inside ordinary transactions. A contractor who overcharges a widow by 300% because she doesn't know lumber prices. A development company that buys family land through manipulated tax sales. County officials who look the other way because the developer funds their next campaign. Lena set the letter on the quilt, pressed her palms flat against the stitching. She needed to feel something real, thread and cotton and a dead woman's handiwork, because the words on the page were pulling the ground out from under her. She picked the letter up again. I kept records, everything, every name, every dollar, every date. I kept it because I knew nobody would believe a woman like me. Old, no degree, no title, no authority anyone in this town respected. But evidence doesn't care who collected it. Evidence has its own voice, and I collected enough to fill a courtroom. Then the paragraph that changed the temperature inside Lena's chest. What I gathered is still in this house, below the pantry floor. I sealed it because I did not trust a single person in this county to protect it. Not the police, not the courts, not the attorneys, especially not the men who kept coming to my door with offers to buy this land. Because they were not buying property, Lena. They were purchasing my silence, and I refused to sell. They were not buying property. They were purchasing silence. Lena heard Gilmore's voice in that sentence. These windows don't stay open forever. She heard the voicemail. Before you make any decisions you can't take back. She heard every version of hurry up and be grateful and take what you can get that had ever been aimed at her by someone who stood to profit from her panic. The letter closed with 3 lines, each one alone on the page, each carrying a weight that felt physical. Don't let anyone rush you. The people who want you to decide fast are the ones who benefit from your confusion. I could not fix what I did to your mother, but I can try to stop the damage from traveling any further. If you are reading this, I am gone and you are here. That is enough. You are enough. Now go look under the pantry floor. Lena folded the letter along its original creases, slid it back into the envelope, placed it on top of the photographs, closed the box. Then she sat on the floor of Odelia Hart's back bedroom, with her arms wrapped around her knees, and cried the way she had not cried in years. Not the quiet kind, not the controlled kind she performed in parked cars and bathroom stalls, and the 6 minutes between putting Maris to bed and starting the dishes. This was the deep kind. The kind that happens when something locked inside you for a decade finally cracks open, and what's behind it is bigger than the space you gave it. She cried for her mother, for the girl on the porch steps who did not know yet that trust would become the most expensive thing she ever spent. For the birthdays that were never missed because one had been missed on purpose. For the thermostat at 74. For every quiet, stubborn correction her mother had stitched into their daily life against a wound she never once explained. She cried for Odelia too, and that one caught her off guard. Not forgiveness, not even close, but recognition. The hard, specific ache of seeing a person who caused real harm and then spent the rest of her years trying to balance a ledger that would never zero out. Downstairs, Maris called up. "Mom, there's something weird in the pantry." Lena wiped her face with both hands, stood, pulled her shoulders straight the way she always did before entering a room where she had to be the strongest person in it, which, since the day Maris was born, had been every room she had ever walked into. She went downstairs. Maris stood in the pantry doorway, pointing at the back wall with one small, steady finger. A section of wood that did not match. Newer grain, different stain. The kind of detail you would walk past 100 times if you were in a hurry. The kind of detail you would only find if someone had told you to slow down. Lena knocked on it. The sound that came back was hollow. Empty space behind the wall. And set into the floor beneath the mismatched panel, buried under years of grime, almost impossible to see unless you were already looking. A metal ring, flush with the wood, cold to the touch, designed to be pulled. Lena crouched. Her fingers hovered over it. Every part of her wanted to pull it now, the part that was tired of being broke, the part that was tired of being careful, the part that had spent 8 years doing the responsible thing and getting nothing in return but more responsibility. But Odelia's voice held her still, clear as a church bell in an empty field. "Don't let anyone rush you." Lena stood, took Maris by the hand, walked to the front door. "We're coming back tomorrow," she said. "But Mom." "Tomorrow." They drove home in the dark. Maris fell asleep in the back seat, holding a small porcelain bird she had taken from the mantel. Something light, something harmless, proof that today had not been a dream. And Lena drove with one hand on the wheel and the dead woman's letter pressed against her hip like a second pulse, and she understood, fully, for the first time, that whatever was sealed beneath that floor had been waiting longer than she had been alive. One more night would not matter. What would matter? What would change everything about the next year of her life, about her daughter's future, about 7 families in this county she had not yet met, was what she chose to do with it once she pulled that ring. And she was not going to make that choice in the dark. 4 days. That was how long Lena made herself wait before she touched that ring. 4 days of driving back and forth between her apartment and the Hillside house. 4 days of gloves and trash bags and dust masks. 4 days of filling boxes with things that did not matter, so she could earn the right to open the thing that did. She left Maris with a neighbor named Constance, a retired lunch lady who smelled like cinnamon rolls and asked no questions beyond what time to expect Lena back. Maris didn't argue. She understood, in that quiet way 8-year-olds understand things they cannot name, that her mother was doing something important, and that importance sometimes looked like absence. Lena cleaned the house the way a surgeon prepares a room, with focus, without sentiment, touching everything once and deciding fast. Keep pile. Trash pile. Not sure pile. The not sure pile grew fastest because Odelia Hart had not owned a single meaningless thing. Every object in that house was a sentence in an argument. The newspapers were not newspapers. They were court records, public notices, property transfer announcements, and zoning hearing reports, clipped, dated, and cross-referenced to the ledger on the kitchen table. Lena followed the system. Each sticky note on a newspaper bundle matched a ledger entry. Each ledger entry pointed to a name, a date, and a dollar amount. She started writing the connections on the back of a grocery receipt because she did not have a notebook. And by the second day, the receipt was full on both sides. A picture formed. Slow, ugly, precise. A contractor named Harlan Voss had been overcharging elderly homeowners in the county for at least 12 years. Not by small margins, by 300%. A roof repair that should have cost $4,000 billed at $14,000. A furnace replacement quoted at $9,000 when the unit itself retailed for $2,200. Odelia had kept the original supplier invoices. She had kept the homeowner's canceled checks. She had kept handwritten notes from conversations with the victims. Women mostly. Widows and retirees who paid what they were told because the man in the truck seemed to know what he was talking about. And arguing felt like a luxury they could not afford. But Voss was only one thread. Behind him, connected through county records Odelia had flagged with red tabs, was a development company called Ridgeline Partners. Ridgeline had acquired 7 family properties over the past decade through tax lien sales. The families owed back taxes. The county seized the properties. Ridgeline bought them at auction for pennies on the dollar. Clean, legal, and according to Odelia's notes, entirely coordinated. She had drawn a map, pencil on butcher paper, taped to the inside of a closet door where no one would see it unless they were looking. Property locations marked with red dots. Ridgeline acquisitions marked with black X's. And a line connecting each X to a name in the county assessor's office. A man named Dale Corwin, who had adjusted the tax valuations upward on each property 12 to 18 months before the seizure. Raise the taxes, wait for the owner to fall behind, seize the land, sell it cheap to friends. Odelia had written one sentence at the bottom of the map in block letters. This is not bad luck. This is a machine. Lena sat on the kitchen floor that second afternoon and stared at those words until the light through the window changed angle. She thought about her own life, the rent increases that always came right when she was catching up, the fees that multiplied when she missed a payment by one day, the system that punished poverty with more poverty and then called the result personal failure. Odelia had seen the same machine from a different angle and decided to take it apart, one document at a time, from a house on a hill where nobody thought to look. On the third day, Lena found something that made her stop cleaning entirely. A newspaper clipping taped inside a kitchen drawer. An obituary. A woman named Grace Pelletier, dead at 71. Beside the clipping, in red ink, she tried to fight them alone. I will not make her mistake. Grace Pelletier had owned 40 acres adjacent to Odelia's property. According to the clipping, she died of a stroke. According to Odelia's notes, 3 pages of them, stapled together and filed behind the obituary, Grace had spent her final 2 years fighting a tax reassessment she believed was fraudulent. She wrote letters to the county board. She attended hearings. She hired an attorney who took her money and did nothing. She lost her land 6 weeks before she died. Odelia had attended the tax sale. She watched Ridgeline Partners buy Grace's 40 acres for $11,000. Land that appraised at over $200,000. She wrote in the margin, "They killed her with paper. Nobody went to prison. Nobody even apologized." Lena closed the drawer. Her hands were steady. Her jaw was tight. Something had shifted in her. Not a feeling, but a decision, forming the way ice forms on still water, from the edges inward, silent and irreversible. On the 4th evening, she locked the front door and walked to her car. A black SUV was parked at the end of the gravel road. Engine running, windows tinted. No one got out. It sat there for 11 minutes. Lena counted. She stood beside her car with her keys in her hand and watched, because running was what they expected, and she was finished doing what was expected. At minute 12, the SUV reversed slowly and disappeared into the tree line. Somebody knew she was here, and now she knew they were watching. The ring was colder than it should have been. Lena crouched in the pantry on day 5 with her fingers wrapped around the metal loop, and the first thing she registered was temperature. The floor around it was room temperature, cool, damp, the usual chill of a house built into a hillside. But the ring itself felt like it had been stored in a freezer, like the ground beneath it held a different climate entirely. She pulled. The panel came up easier than she expected. Not stuck, not swollen, not rusted shut. The hinges moved smooth, oiled, maintained. Odelia had not sealed this space and forgotten about it. She had sealed it and kept it ready. Below the panel, a crawl space. Shallow, maybe 3 feet deep, lined with plastic sheeting and cedar planks. Dry, insulated. The air that rose from it smelled different from the rest of the house. No must, no rot. Just cedar and silence and something faintly metallic like the inside of a safe. 2 containers sat in the center of the space. Waterproof plastic bins, the kind sold at hardware stores for storing ammunition or emergency supplies. Both sealed with latches and wrapped in a second layer of heavy-gauge plastic. Odelia had protected these the way a person protects something they believe will outlast them. Lena lifted the first container out. Her arms shook, not from the weight, but from what the weight represented. She set it on the pantry floor and unlatched the lid. Cash. Bundled in rubber bands, each bundle marked with a date and an amount in Odelia's handwriting. Not a fortune. Lena counted roughly $19,000, accumulated over what appeared to be 15 years of small, disciplined savings. 50 here, 100 there. Pension checks stretched and trimmed and rationed by a woman who understood that money hidden in a bank could be frozen, garnished, or tracked, but money hidden in a crawl space answered to no one. $19,000, enough to change Lena's year, enough to move, enough to breathe. She set it aside, opened the second container, and the room around her went quiet in a way that had nothing to do with sound. Documents, not copies, originals. Signed contracts between Ridgeline partners and county officials, on letterhead with notarized stamps. A personal letter from Harlan Voss to the county assessor Dale Corwin, discussing what Voss called adjusted valuations and what any court in the country would call fraud. Photographs. Survey stakes photographed in 2 positions, weeks apart, proving that property boundaries had been physically moved. Each photograph marked on the back with GPS coordinates, dates, and Odelia's initials. A handwritten list of 7 families who had lost their land. Names, addresses, amounts paid at auction versus actual market value. The gap between those 2 numbers on every single entry was enough to make Lena's vision blur. And at the bottom of the container, a letter, sealed in a separate envelope, addressed to the county recorder's office. Never mailed. Lena opened it. The letter was 3 pages, typed on a manual typewriter, which meant Odelia had composed it word by word, key by key, with the kind of deliberate effort that only a woman without a computer and without help could produce. It laid out the entire case. Names, dates, document references, a hand-drawn map of every property Ridgeline had acquired, overlaid with the timeline of tax reassessments. The final paragraph read, "I kept this because I knew no one in this county would act on it. I am old. I am a woman alone. I have no title and no office and no degree. But I have proof. And proof does not care who gathered it. I am leaving this for someone who needs the truth more than they need comfort. If you are reading this, that person is you." Lena placed the letter on the floor beside the cash and the contracts and the photographs, and she sat in the pantry of a dead woman's house and felt the full weight of what she was holding. $19,000 could save her life. These documents could save 7 families. She could not do both. The cash was anonymous. The documents were a lit match in a room full of gasoline. The moment she used them, the moment she brought them to anyone with authority, she would become a target. A single mother with no legal background and no connections, standing between a development company and the land they had already stolen. Her phone buzzed. The attorney, Gilmore. His voice this time carried a new edge, sharper, stripped of the smoothness that had coated it in his office. "Mrs. Crowe, I'm calling as a courtesy. The development group has raised their offer, considerably, but they need a decision by Friday." Friday, 3 days. Lena looked at the documents spread across the floor. She looked at the cash. She looked at the crawl space, the empty, dark, patient space Odelia had built beneath her own kitchen to hold the truth until someone strong enough came to carry it out. 3 days, and she understood now, with a clarity that tasted like iron in her mouth, exactly why they wanted this property so badly. It was not the 4 acres they were buying. It was the silence underneath. The copy machine at the Bethel Falls Public Library cost 15 cents a page. Lena fed it $73.45 over 4 hours. She copied every document, every photograph, every page of Odelia's handwritten notes. She copied the typed letter to the county recorder, both sides, both pages, including the hand-drawn map Odelia had attached with a paper clip that had rusted a brown ring into the paper. Then she drove to a coffee shop in the next town, connected to their Wi-Fi, and uploaded photographs of every original to a cloud storage account she created using an email address that contained none of her real information. She saved the password on a slip of paper and tucked it into the lining of her purse, behind a photograph of Maris at age 3. Then she drove back to the Hillside house and put every original back in the waterproof container, back in the crawl space, back under the floor. She replaced the panel. She pushed a bag of flour on top of it. Odelia had taught her, through a letter, through a house, through years of organized patience, that the first rule of holding dangerous truth is making sure it cannot be destroyed in a single fire. She sat in the kitchen and called a number she had found in the phone book at the library. Legal Aid Society, 2 counties east, far enough that local politics would not reach. A woman answered on the 4th ring. "My name is Lena Crowe. I've inherited a property in Bethel Falls, and I've found documents that I believe show a pattern of land fraud in this county. I need to speak to someone who doesn't know anyone here." The pause on the other end was long enough to hold its own weather. "My name is Ruth Okafor," the woman said. "I'm a retired attorney. I do pro bono intake for the office." Another pause. "How detailed are these documents?" 15 years of records, original contracts, signed letters between a contractor and the county assessor, photographs of moved survey stakes with GPS coordinates and dates, a list of 7 families whose land was taken through coordinated tax lien manipulation. Ruth Okafor did not speak for 8 full seconds. Lena counted. "How soon can you bring me the originals?" 2 days later, Ridgeline's representative came to the house. He was younger than Lena expected, clean shave, pressed shirt, the kind of man who carried a leather portfolio and said, "I appreciate your time," before he had earned any of it. His name was Trent Beaumont, and he stood on Odelia's porch with the posture of someone who had been told this would be easy. "Mrs. Crowe, I want to be straightforward with you," he smiled. "We admire what you're doing here. Taking on a property like this, as a single mother, that takes courage. But this house needs work, real work, structural, electrical, plumbing. We're talking 6 figures just to bring it to code." He let that number sit in the air. "We're offering you a way out, a clean sale. No inspections, no contingencies, no waiting. You walk away with enough to start fresh somewhere warm. Your daughter gets stability." Lena stood in the doorway and listened. She watched his face the way she had learned to watch faces in offices, not for what they showed, but for what they held back. Trent Beaumont believed every word he was saying. He believed he was helping. That was the most dangerous part. The people who think they are rescuing you while they bury the evidence under your feet, They sleep better than the ones who know they are lying. "What happens to the personal effects?" Lena asked. "The documents stored here." Trent's smile held, but his eyes moved. A flicker, less than a second, the kind of reflex a person cannot train away. "Standard process," he said. "The property transfers as is. We handle the cleanup." Cleanup. Lena heard the word and understood it the way you understand a key turning in a lock from the wrong side. They did not want the hillside. They did not want the 4 acres or the sagging roof or the broken porch post. They wanted what was under the floor, and they wanted to call its destruction cleanup. "I appreciate you coming out," Lena said. Her voice was steady, her hands were still. She looked Trent Beaumont in the eye the way her mother never could, not with aggression, not with fear, but with the quiet, immovable certainty of a woman who had read the receipts. "I'm not selling." His smile disappeared, not slowly, all at once, like a light switched off. "Mrs. Crowe, I'd encourage you to think carefully." "I have. That's the problem, isn't it?" She closed the door. Not a slam, a click. The sound of a lock engaging. The sound of a decision that could not be taken back. Through the window, she watched him stand on the porch for a full minute, portfolio hanging at his side, staring at the closed door like it had spoken to him in a language he did not expect. Then he walked to his car, took out his phone, made a call, spoke for less than 30 seconds, and drove away without looking back. Lena's phone buzzed that night. Gilmore. His voice was stripped of every pretense now. No warmth, no smile she could hear through the speaker. "You're making a mistake, Mrs. Crowe. I want that on the record." Lena hung up. Then she called Ruth Okafor and said 5 words. "They know I'm not selling." Ruth said 3. "Good. We're ready." Ruth Okafor arrived at the Hillside house carrying 2 banker's boxes and the kind of calm that only comes from having seen worse. She was 63 years old, built like a woman who had carried heavy things her entire life and had stopped apologizing for the muscles. Silver locks pulled back with a single clip, reading glasses on a chain, shoes designed for function, not impression. She stepped onto Odelia's porch, looked at the sagging roof, the crooked post, the brush climbing the stone walls, and nodded once. Not in admiration, but in recognition. She had seen houses like this before, houses that held what institutions refused to. Lena spread the documents across the kitchen table. Every contract, every photograph, every page of Odelia's ledger. The typed letter, the hand-drawn map. Ruth moved through them the way a jeweler moves through a tray of stones, picking up each piece, holding it to the light, setting it down in a new position that only she could see the logic of. 2 hours passed without small talk. Then Ruth looked up and said, "This woman was smarter than anyone in this county ever gave her credit for."
Together, they built the complaint. Ruth handled the legal architecture, federal statutes, state property codes, filing requirements, chain of custody for the original documents. Lena handled the narrative. She organized Odelia's notes into chronological order. She matched every claim to its supporting evidence.
She created a timeline that ran from the first manipulated tax assessment to the most recent ridgeline acquisition. And when she stepped back and looked at it, the pattern was so clean it could have been printed in a textbook. She was good at this, not just competent, precise. And that discovery hit her almost as hard as the documents had. Before Maris was born, Lena had completed 2 semesters of paralegal studies at the community college in Scranton. She had a gift for it: the reading, the organization, the ability to hold 15 facts in her head and find the thread that connected them. Then the pregnancy came. Then the bills. Then the slow, grinding erosion of a life that required all of her energy just to stay upright. And the paralegal program became another thing she filed under, didn't work out, and never mentioned again. But here in Odelia's kitchen, with documents spread across the table and a retired attorney watching her work, Lena felt something open in her chest that had been closed for 9 years. Not hope, that was too fragile a word. Capacity. The knowledge that she could do this. that she had always been able to do this, that the only thing standing between her and this version of herself had been the specific cruelty of a world that punishes women without safety nets for having the nerve to need time. Ruth filed the complaint with the State Attorney General's office the following Monday. 47 pages, 20 exhibits, 7 named victims. The response came faster than either of them expected. Gilmore called. Not smooth this time, not polite. His words came through the phone like gravel in a blender. You have no idea what you've started. There are going to be complications, liability questions. People are going to look very carefully at how you obtain those documents. Lena pressed record on her phone. She let him talk for 2 minutes and 14 seconds. He said the words exposure and vulnerability and reconsider more times than she could count. He never once said fraud. He never once said ridgeline. He talked around the truth the way a man walks around a hole in the floor, and Lena captured every step. She sent the recording to Ruth. That evening, she drove to the Hillside house with Maris for the first time in a week. She carried firewood from a stack she had found beside the shed. Seasoned oak, split clean, dry enough to catch on the first match. She built a fire in the stone hearth. The chimney drew clean and strong, as if it had been waiting for this. Warmth filled the front room. Not electric heat, real warmth. The kind that comes from wood and stone and the particular alchemy of a fire in a house that has been cold for too long. Maris spread one of Odelia's quilts on the floor in front of the fireplace. Bear paw pattern. She lay on her stomach and drew in her sketchbook. The house, the hill, a horse that looked like the rocking horse upstairs, but with wings. Lena sat beside her in the kind of silence that does not ache. The kind that holds you instead of hollowing you out. A knock at the door, not aggressive, patient. 3 knocks, evenly spaced, the cadence of someone who was used to waiting. Lena opened it. An elderly woman stood on the porch. Small, white-haired, wearing a quilted vest over a flannel shirt and holding a foil-covered dish in both hands like it was a peace offering and a credential all at once. "My name is Alice Pelletier," she said. "Grace was my sister. I heard someone finally opened Odelia's house." Lena held the door wide. Alice sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Odelia had kept her ledger, and told Lena something the letter never mentioned. Grace Pelletier had not fought alone. 4 other families in the county had kept their own records, receipts, letters, photographs, notes scrawled on the backs of church bulletins and napkins and the margins of phone books. Each family had collected pieces. None of them had enough on their own. None of them had known about each other. Odelia knew, Alice said. She was the only one who talked to all of us. She was putting it together, a file for each family. She told me once, "When the right person comes, the pieces will fit." I thought she was being dramatic. Alice looked around the kitchen, at the jars, at the ledger, at the marks on the wall where Odelia's calendar had hung. She was not being dramatic. Lena did not inherit a house. She inherited a coalition that had been waiting 20 years to form. 5 families, 5 sets of records, and 1 dead woman who had spent her final decade stitching them together in a house nobody thought was worth entering. All it needed was someone willing to walk through the door. 8 months later, Lena Crowe stood in the doorway of Odelia Hart's front room and watched a woman she had never met sit down at the kitchen table and cry. The woman's name was Darlene Whitfield. She was 59. She had lost her family's property, 3 generations of it, to a tax lien sale in 2017. She had spent 4 years believing it was her own fault, that she should have read the fine print, that she should have fought harder, that the system had not failed her, that she had failed the system. Ruth O'Caffer handed Darlene a tissue and a copy of the settlement letter. The State Attorney General's investigation had concluded 5 weeks earlier. Harlan Voss's contracting license was revoked. Dale Corwin resigned from the county assessor's office before formal charges were filed. 2 additional county officials followed. Ridgeline Partners dissolved as a corporate entity, its assets frozen pending restitution proceedings. 7 families received compensation. Not full value, restitution never is, but enough to matter. Enough to prove, on paper, in a courtroom, with stamps and signatures and the weight of a system finally turning in the right direction, that what happened to them was not their fault. Darlene Whitfield was the fifth person to sit at that table this month. Each one came with the same expression, the specific disbelief of a person being told, for the first time, that what they lived through was real, was wrong, and was finally being named out loud. Lena poured coffee. She had learned to keep a full pot going. The house looked different now, not transformed, corrected. The roof was patched, the porch posts straightened, new glass in 3 windows, a coat of sealant on the foundation walls. Maris's drawings taped to the refrigerator beside Odelia's old calendar, which Lena had left exactly where it was, turned to the wrong month, covered in numbers nobody else could decode. A monument to a woman who believed that keeping count was a form of resistance. Maris had the rocking horse in her bedroom upstairs. She had painted it blue because red was Odelia's color and blue was hers. And the logic of that, the 8-year-old certainty of it, made Lena's chest tight every time she walked past the open door. Ruth helped Lena set up a small resource center in the front room. Nothing fancy. A filing cabinet, a phone line paid for out of the restitution Lena received as Odelia's heir, a table where people could sit and be heard without a meter running. Lena typed up a 1-page guide. How to check your tax assessment, how to request contractor licenses, how to file a complaint with the state. She made copies at the library, 15 cents a page, and left them in a plastic holder on the porch. The first month, 3 people came. The second month, 11. By the 4th month, Lena was getting calls from 2 counties over. One evening in early spring, Maris asked a question Lena had been preparing for since the day she opened Odelia's letter. Was Odelia a good person? They were sitting on the porch. The hillside was green and loud with insects and the specific energy of a landscape remembering how to grow. Lena took her time answering because this was not a question that deserved a fast response. She was hard, Lena said. She was hard in ways that hurt people who deserve softness. She made your grandmother's childhood colder than it needed to be, and she knew it, and she wrote it down so I would know it too. Then why did you keep her house? Because after she hurt your grandmother, she spent the rest of her life trying to make sure other people didn't get hurt the same way. She couldn't fix what she broke, but she built something with what was left. Maris thought about this. She had her mother's habit of turning ideas over slowly, testing them for weight. Is that what we're doing? Lena looked at her daughter, this girl who turned chaos into inventory, who called her drawings accurate instead of beautiful, who had carried a porcelain bird home from a dead woman's house and kept it on her nightstand like a compass. And what she felt was not pride. It was the sharp, specific ache of watching a child learn that the world is complicated and choosing to stay in it anyway. Yeah, baby, Lena said. That's what we're doing. That night, after Maris was asleep, Lena walked to the front room. She took Odelia's typed letter, the one addressed to the county recorder's office, the one that had never been mailed, and placed it in a simple wooden frame she had bought at the hardware store for $6. She hung it on the wall beside the door, not as decoration, as a reminder that accountability, even late, even incomplete, even delivered by a woman who had caused her own share of damage, still matters. That the people who tell you to decide fast are the people who profit from your confusion. That patience is not weakness. That evidence speaks for itself when the person who collected it no longer can. And that sometimes the most powerful thing a woman without power can do is refuse to be rushed. If you are watching this right now and carrying something heavy, a choice you cannot make, a truth you are afraid to speak, a debt that someone told you was your fault when you know in your bones it was a trap, remember what a woman on a hillside in Pennsylvania understood before anyone else did. Keeping count is not bitterness. It is not paranoia. It is the quiet, daily, unglamorous act of insisting that the truth deserves a record, even when no one is asking for one. You are not what happened to you. You are what you choose to do with what you find. Lena Crowe found documents under a pantry floor, but that is not what changed her life. What changed her life was the decision she made standing over them. To be slow when the world demanded speed, to be honest when silence was easier, and to hand her daughter a version of strength that did not require endurance as its only proof. And now, if this story stayed with you, if it found the part of you that needed to hear it, I need you to do something. Subscribe to this channel and turn on that notification bell, because every week we bring you a story like this one. Stories about people who refused to be invisible. Stories that remind you what courage looks like when it is not loud, when it does not wear a cape, when it sits at a kitchen table with a cup of coffee and a filing cabinet, and changes the world one document at a time. Share this story with someone who needs it today. A friend carrying a heavy decision. A mother doing the math between two bills. A woman who has been told to be grateful when she should have been told she was right. Send it to them. And while you are at it, drop a comment and tell me, what truth are you carrying that deserves to be heard? Because this comment section is not just a space, it is a room with an open door. And your story might be the one that changes someone else's life tonight. We will see you in the next one.